Professor, thank you so much for your time today as always. Let's first get your reaction on the news of Buthelezi's sacking or removal from his Zulu prime ministerial post. What do you make firstly of the King's reasonings as well when he says the reverend had strayed from expectations of the monarch without giving us much detail as to what exactly was referring to, yet the reverend in his statement says not once since his appointment has the King ever notified him of his removal and maintained that the King maintains that the King also has never expressed any discontent, disapproval, or had any quarrels with him pertaining to his duties.
Well, thank you, Alicia. Well, definitely there is a schism, which reminds me and everyone else of the schism that was there between the King and the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi from April until Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi died in 2023. So it's just a repetition of the same. Obviously, the King has not been happy about something, and so he has decided that he should release him. And as you rightly say, Buthelezi says he's waiting for the letter from the King. There is something happening in the background, which we may not know now, but will come out very soon. And it could even be politically motivated within the IFP, the internal politics of the IFP, and possibly the internal politics of the IFP and the MK party in KZN. There is something definitely happening which makes it very difficult for the King to stay on with the Reverend Buthelezi, and they could be forceful that have said this thing could happen, that they separate. But it was expected from the word go.
Very interesting views there, Professor. I'm not going to delve into it much, but historically, look, we know that this position was quite a significant and key one, right? Pertaining to very crucial matters of the royal house and served as, of course, the King's most trusted servant. Do you think this is still how it's actually preserved and represented, especially since the passing of King Zwelithini as well as Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi?
Well, the passing of King Zwelithini and Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi has left a void in the affairs of the Zulu kingdom and the Zulu royal family.
Yes.
And this void is showing itself every time because you can see that there is instability. And this instability has also expressed itself through AmaZulu taking a bit of a distance from the royal family. Also the absence of a royal council, which should be voted. And therefore, I think when it comes to advisories, there's a vacuum there, which will make people very unstable for a long time to come. Now, the King appoints whoever he wants to appoint. He had some, this is in the beginning when Buthelezi was there. Even maybe there was going to be some kind of problems, politically speaking. And I would be proud if some political forces are actually there.
Look, Professor, so you spoke earlier on of schisms and other factors that might be at play. So now, looking at the broader context, Professor, Reverend Buthelezi was holding various senior positions in government as well. And many had said this exposed him to be vulnerable, more vulnerable to certain influence. And I know you alluded to earlier on in your other reply. But looking at the current issues now within the kingdom itself, how do you foresee things unfolding on those unresolved matters, particularly within the royal household, and now that are seemingly trying to overlap onto the Ingonyama Trust, where early this year we also know that the King, King Musa Xulu Zwelithini, had fired Thanduyise Mzimela, who was actually the board chair. And Reverend Buthelezi also made mention in this regard, saying that there's been attorneys, the Stephen Rakwena attorneys, that are now seemingly working or preservers of the Ingonyama Trust.
Well, there's a huge cry in the board of Ingonyama Trust. As you know, the King has fired some people there, which maybe it's the minister who has that authority to fire people in the board, because the board members are appointed by the minister.
Yes.
the Ingonyama Trust is highly contested. And it's just, as I said, it's a repetition of what happened last year when, until he died, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi was complaining about Mr. Jacob Mnisi and the running of Ingonyama Trust from Whitburn. I think it's just a repetition of that kind of scenario. And the king, of course, later made himself the chairperson, as the law says he can, removing, as you say, Inkosi Mzimela. What is going to happen next is that the affairs of Ingonyama Trust could end at court. Because I heard that the board is planning to resist the actions of the king. Mm-hmm. The affairs of Prime Ministership, I think Buthelezi is already fired. I can't see him coming back. But the king could be advised to look for somebody who is not so politically involved. I know that the second in command after the deputy prime minister is also a high-level member of the MK party. Mm-hmm. So the same, if he appoints him, the same kind of complaints against Places of Buthelezi would then also start piling up to say he moved from the IFP to the MK party in terms of appointing. Mm. There's going to be instability for quite some time around this, because until there's a royal council that is appointed which advises the king, there's just too many people that come from time to time and claim to be advisors of the king.
So, Professor, in closing, then, very interesting views, by the way, that we still do not know who is to replace the Reverend. Many have suggested that Inkosi Xulu might just be called up. And how do you see this one playing out when we particularly making reference to stability, not only within the province, but also within the kingdom?
Well, Inkosi Xulu is a Deputy Prime Minister, is a high-level member of the MK party. Mm-hmm. If he is appointed, there will be resistance from many other quarters who are not in favor of the MK party. So we will be back to square one again. Mm-hmm. The kingdom can be stabilized if the king went according to the 2019 Act, a royal council that advises him, consisting of men and women from around the province, who are loyal to the kingdom, and that has not happened. And well, maybe it will happen soon, and if it happens, then that is the only hope that will stabilize the kingdom. Plus, also, between 2022 and now, too many self-appointed advisors have come forward, and that is why you have this conflict that has now is playing itself out there between the king and Reverend Buthelezi.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Prof, for your input this afternoon. That is Professor Musa Xulu there, who's a cultural expert on the axing of Reverend Buthelezi as the Zulu traditional Prime Minister.